Tom, lovely to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. Before you start your presentation, there's a question that's on everybody's mind. Where did you buy your hat? Because it's really amazing.
Thank you. The hat is actually Australian. It's an Akubra.
Okay, we don't buy Australian things. Thank you.
Thank you all. Before I start, I just want to say a very quick thank you to everyone here for inviting me to come to South Africa to present at this event. This is my first time to come to Africa, and it's been incredible so far, even though I've been here just over 24 hours. I went on a game drive yesterday, and it was stunning. We had a driver, Peter, who did a great job. We left at 3 o'clock and went through the park. We saw rhinos, we saw lions, we saw wildebeest, we saw warthogs, we saw elephants. Well, we saw a lot of elephants' asses. They weren't facing us at any point. I saw a young rhinoceros, a 2-week-old rhinoceros. I got a beautiful picture of it. I saw zebras. And at the end of the tour, as we were heading back here, Peter, our driver, got a phone call. Or not a phone call, he got a walkie-talkie communication to say that someone had spotted lions. And we hadn't yet seen any lions. So he stopped the Jeep and said, guys, I have a report that there might be some lions. We're on our way back to the compound now, to the hotel. Do you want us to turn around and go back? And we all said yes. So we went back and we spent about 45 minutes to an hour in the failing light, because it was around 6 o'clock, looking at lions on one side of the road and impalas and wildebeest behind us. And the lions slowly but surely getting closer and closer and closer to us, and then crossing the road behind us to where the wildebeest were. And you could hear the wildebeest going, getting scared, getting spooked by the lions coming. It was an incredible experience that I will never, ever, ever forget. And it would be impossible for me to have experienced that without you guys having me here today to speak. So thank you very much for that. So I've changed the title of the talk a little bit because we live in a social media age, as people have already alluded to. So I'm calling it 10 predictions of what digital will deliver by 2027. And I've subtitled it, You Won't Believe Number 10. It's all about the clickbait. So the usual safe harbor and legal disclaimers out of the way. You've heard a little bit about myself and the hat. Yeah, I joined SAP last September as a futurist and IoT evangelist. You have my contact details there. Please feel free to reach out to me at any time. You have my email address. My blog is there at tomraftery.com, LinkedIn, phone number, and at the bottom there, my Twitter handle. Be aware that if you do decide to follow me on Twitter, I'm quite prolific. It can be a bit of a fire hose at times. I've tweeted about 57,500 times so far. So why 10 years? Well, it's always hard to predict forward and see what's coming down the line, accurately at least. So I decided, well, look, it's 2017. Let's look back first and see what the world was like in 2007. Because in 2007, we had a very different world, and it doesn't seem like that long ago. But in 2007, Facebook had just started. Twitter had just started. I joined Twitter in February 2007, and I was one of the first. There was no WhatsApp, no Instagram, no iPad, no Kindle, no Apple TV, no Chromecast, no Snapchat. None of these services or devices existed then. There was no smartphones. In 2007, Steve Jobs launched the first iPhone. And it was a crap device. 3.5-inch screen, 16 gigabits of memory maximum. Maximum, that was the top line one, 16 gigs of memory. It didn't have 3G. It had Edge, 2.5G. And compare that to the iPhones of today. The iPhone 7 has a maximum 256 gigabytes of storage, a plethora of sensors, a 5.5-inch screen. And that's the iPhone 7. We're seeing later on today at the Worldwide Developer Conference, the iPhone 8 will probably be announced, and who knows what that's going to have. Because it's the 10-year anniversary of the iPhone, it's going to have a slew of more and more technologies added to it. Now, if I had said to you, when the iPhone launched in 2007, if I had said to you that phones could be used for tracking the health of pregnant women, you would have said, Tom, you're off your meds. You know, that'll never happen. And yet WebMD announced a couple of months ago that their application for pregnant women, which has 1.5 million subscribers, is going to be used in conjunction with Apple's open source technology research kit, which is an open source research platform, to track the pregnancy of women who are pregnant, obviously. 65,000 women across the US alone have serious complications during their pregnancy. So this is life-changing stuff for a lot of people. If I had said to you 10 years ago that your watch could be used to predict the onset of stroke with 97% accuracy, you would have said, Tom, you're smoking crack. That'll never happen. And yet it was announced last month out of the University of California, San Francisco, that using the data from watches, from Apple Watches, in conjunction with artificial intelligence, researchers were able to, with 97% accuracy, predict the onset of stroke. This is the world we live in today. And if I had said that to you 10 years ago, you would have said, not a chance. So that's the kind of context we're talking about and the level of change we're looking at in 10 years. So we'll go into the predictions now. Finally. Number one, the world of manufacturing is already being significantly changed by digitization and IoT. We're seeing connected manufacturing with things like product as a service. And if you're not familiar with the concept of product as a service, it's one where the manufacturer, instead of selling the devices that they manufacture, now sell the service of that device. And we have an example ourselves as SAP. We have a customer called Kaiser who manufacture air compressors. And they sell these air compressors, and these are big devices that are used in things like construction. But they now have a separate business model that they're developing with these air compressors, and you can see it on their website. They have a page on their website where they say, no, you don't have to buy our compressors. We'll give you the compressors, and we'll charge you per cubic meter of air that the compressors produce. And so you have the customer and the manufacturer in perfect alignment. They both want the compressors to be working full time. Because if the compressor fails for the customer, it's downtime for them. If the compressor fails for the manufacturer, it means they're not getting revenue. So product as a service for manufacturers is going to become a very new and very different, and it's going to become the norm, I think, for a lot of manufacturing companies. You then get things like mass customization happening with lot sizes of 1. This is where you say, I want this kind of device with this add-on and this color and this whatever else. And it's manufactured, bang, and there are lots and lots and lots of these done. And each lot size, instead of being lot sizes of thousands, come down to lot sizes of 1. And we have another example of this with our customer, Harley Davidson. And Harley make these magnificent motorbikes. They're an iconic brand. But when they shifted their manufacturing to digital, they were able to reduce the time to manufacture a custom bike from 21 days down to 6 hours. And what that means now is they can build a whole experience around it. When you go onto the website and you customize the Harley that you want, you get an invitation to come to their factory and watch a block of metal enter the line, and you can see it at various stages transforming into your customized bike. And at the end, you're handed the keys, you can sit up on the Harley and drive off the lot. And these kinds of things, these is going to become more and more the norm for manufacturing companies to have this mass customization with lot sizes of 1. And you can imagine things like 3D printing, where you have distributed printing, where, for example, if you want, say, a pair of running shoes, you design them yourself online. And you get an email saying, okay, your runners have been 3D printed in the closest shop to you. You can go and collect them in the next half an hour. These kind of things are going to become the absolute norm. There are a couple of caveats, though. John Deere, for example, have done this kind of thing. They've rolled out this beautiful ecosystem, the My John Deere site, where you log in and you can see all the information about your devices, about your tractors, your combine harvesters, or whatever. But they've taken it, according to some of their customers, a little bit too far. They've locked their customers in such a way that the customers are having a hard time doing any repairs to their devices. If they try to repair them themselves, and this is in the US, but if they try and repair them themselves, John Deere says that voids the warranty. You're not allowed to do that. And John Deere gets notified if they try and do the repairs because these are connected devices. So there's now a market for hacked tractor firmware in the Ukraine. If I had said to you 10 years ago there's going to be a market for hacked tractor firmware, you would have said, Tom, come on. Give it up, guy, come on, what are you on? You know, but it's there. It's unbelievable. The other thing that you want to think about in terms of product as a service is if now these devices are being sold as a service instead of as a device, that means the capital cost of purchasing them comes way, way down. So if you're in an asset-heavy industry, one of the things that protects you from competition is it's very hard for startups to come in because they'll have a huge capital cost with acquiring all the assets. But if it's product as a service, it's very easy. The startup costs fall to zero. So you may think you're protected because you've got a lot of assets, but that not may be the case for long. Okay, prediction number 2, and we're sticking with energy. The energy industry is being massively, massively, massively transformed right now. There's all kinds of things happening. We've got solar falling in price, wind falling in price. We've got end-to-end connectivity coming. And that's going to be hugely transformative. A lot of this stuff is allowing CO2 reduction to actually happen in energy production. And we're going to move on to a couple of new models that I'll talk about in a second. But first of all, I mentioned solar, and this is not dissimilar for wind either, but there's a thing called the Swanson effect, or the Swanson law, which is equivalent to Moore's law, but it's for solar. And what the Swanson law says that as solar power doubles in installation capacity, in other words, as more and more solar is installed, as it doubles in installed capacity, the price drops 20%. And of course, this leads to this beautiful virtuous circle that because the price drops 20%, it suddenly becomes more attractive to more people. And as it becomes more attractive to more people, more gets installed. Swanson's law takes effect, the price drops another 20%, becomes more attractive, and so on and so on and so on. This is the price curve from 1977 to 2013. And you can see where it's going. And that hasn't stopped because this is the last 3 years. Well, it's 20. This is bids on this is massive utility bids on international markets. The dark red lines are subsidized bids, and the light ones are unsubsidized. The one, don't worry about reading where they were and what happened, but just look at the curve. You can see that the unsubsidized bid, the top line there is 8 cents per kilowatt hour. The unsubsidized bid in 2013 was 8 cents per kilowatt hour. In 2016, it was below 3 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's the way price is going for solar. And as I say, wind is falling as well. Not quite as fast, but it's been falling for longer. And that leads to things like this. Elon Musk is rolling out his solar roof. And he's not alone, lots of other companies are doing it. But he has said, when he announced the pricing for this last month, he has said that a solar roof will be cheaper than a slate roof. Which leads to this. This is the curve, or the graph of installed PV in the US for the last number of years. And 2016 was 95% higher than 2015. So solar is taking off. And this, by the way, isn't residential solar only. This is residential, industrial, and utility solar. Solar is taking off. If we move on to storage, battery storage, The price of battery storage is coming down. And sorry about the quality of this graph. It's from the University of Eindhoven, and they're not known for their graphic abilities. But the data is solid. So the price of batteries is coming down. And from the same organization, the density of the batteries is increasing. So batteries are holding more and more and more energy, and it's becoming cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to buy them, which leads to this. This is the amount of batteries installed and projected forward for the next couple of years, and you can see that market is exploding as well. And this is going to have enormous impacts for utilities. And because storage is becoming so cheap and so widespread, it means the ability to roll out variable generation sources like wind and solar becomes far easier because it allows you to smooth the curve. It smooths out any instabilities and therefore reduce the carbon footprint of the energy you're generating. I mentioned Tesla briefly. They've also, as we know, maybe they generate electric vehicles. But they're rolling out their Model 3 later this year. It's their new model of Tesla. They put that up for pre-sale last year at a pre-sale price of $1,000 in Europe, in the US, or 1,000 euros in Europe. They had 400,000 people commit $1,000 or 1,000 euros for one of these Model 3 cars. 400,000 people for a car that didn't exist yet. That's how powerful the brand is. The batteries in the Model 3s will be somewhere between 70 kilowatt hours and 100 or 110 kilowatt hours. We're not sure yet, but it'll be in around that ballpark. Elon Musk has said that they want to sell 500,000 of these a year from 2018. 500,000 a year. That's pretty ambitious stuff, but he's not known for being shy. If he sells half of that number, if he sells 250,000 Model 3s, or 250,000 of all the models, and let's say they have an average battery size of 80 kilowatt hours. 80 kilowatt hours by 250,000 cars is 20 gigawatt hours of storage. That's 20 nuclear power plants worth of storage a year. He's building 20 virtual power plants a year, at least, every year, cumulatively rolling forward. And these are connected because these cars are always on, always connected, always talking back to base. So you can imagine him rolling out an energy platform where he does a rev share with the car owners, where you go to work in the morning and you say to your car, I want to go home this evening at 5 o'clock. I want enough energy in the battery to take me home. You've charged overnight at 5 cents per kilowatt hour or 3 cents per kilowatt hour, whatever it is. The price spikes during the day because it gets hot and everyone turns on their aircon, goes up to 20 cents per kilowatt hour, and the car says, okay, I'll sell some energy now. And that can be controlled cloud-based from Tesla's base. And the money you make on that is a rev share and it comes off your lease. With the cost of energy cratering right now as it is, I can see utility companies moving from their current pricing system to an all-you-can-eat system. Kind of like broadband. You pay your 500 or 1,000 rand per month, whatever it is, and you eat it, or you can use as much energy as you want, because it's essentially free in terms of generation. It's going down to 1 cent per kilowatt hour and lower, because that curve is going to keep going down. So how do the utilities make their money? They make it on the extra services they add on top of the generation. So this is my dad. It's a photograph I took of him on his 80th birthday. He lives alone in Ireland. My mother died in 2007. My sister lives in Texas, and I live in the south of Spain. Would I pay his utility company 10 euros a month to get a notification that the lights didn't go off at 11 o'clock at night, or the lights didn't come on at 8 o'clock in the morning? You bet your life I would. That's a killer app for any utility company, because older seniors living alone is a large and growing demographic. And the vast majority of these seniors have people my age and younger who are interested in their well-being and who would pay hand over fist to know that their parents or aunts and uncles are okay. And it doesn't have to be something like that. You can imagine other exceptional energy use cases. If you have a second home and the lights go on and you're not there, you'll want to know about that. Or if you have a second home with a fridge in it and the power goes off and you have meat in the fridge, you'll want to know about that. So there are all kinds of other services that utility companies can be providing. The whole smart home management area, that's exploding. That's one that utility companies absolutely have to get into. So utility is going to be completely changed in 10 years' time. Number 3. We talked slightly about transportation and automobiles, but the transportation industry is, again, we're seeing it already. It's going to be completely changed. We're seeing autonomous vehicles. Cars will have predictive maintenance, so they won't fail. The electric vehicles, anyway, have only a few hundred moving parts compared to the thousands of moving parts in internal combustion engines. So they're going to be far, far more reliable. They're also going to be far safer. One of the Tesla Model S cars last year, when it was in autonomous mode, killed its driver. The car was driving along a highway. The driver was watching a movie on a DVD player as the car was driving down the highway. A large 18-wheeler semi drove in front of him, crossed the road in front of him. It was a white-sided semi. The autonomous vehicle saw it, but thought the white was the white of the sky behind it, so it didn't see it, and drove the car directly under it, instantly killing the driver. The National Highway Transportation Safety Board in America immediately opened up an investigation. And as a result of their months-long investigation into Tesla and its autonomous vehicles, they said that the drivers driving in Teslas, when they're on autonomous mode, have 40% fewer crashes than when the cars are being driven by people. This has huge, huge implications. Because you can imagine the insurance industry sitting up and going, oh, 40% fewer crashes? We're going to have to start charging people more money if they want to drive the cars themselves. Right? And that's going to happen. That is going to happen. That's guaranteed that's going to happen. Because if it's safer, then you'll have, because the cars are connected, pay as you use for your insurance, or pay by performance. I want the safe driving option rather than the sporty option for my insurance. Again, you pay less, but if you go over a certain threshold of steering and accelerating, then you go into the next band, you get a notification, sorry, you've gone up this month. That's going to happen as well. The other thing about this, of course, is as you get autonomous vehicles and electric vehicles, you're getting less pollution, less crashes, as I mentioned. You're getting less congestion because there will be fewer cars. Because as the cars become autonomous, people will move more to the ride-sharing model. And as there are fewer cars, then again, you'll get less congestion, but you'll get other industries impacted. The car service industry, the car insurance industry, the car parking industry. Massive swathes of car parks globally will be hugely impacted by this. People will no longer need to park the cars. The car drives you to the place, you hop it, car drives off and picks someone else up. Why do you need car parks? And it goes beyond that because we're moving away from cars driving on roads to flying cars. Now, I know this sounds like science fiction, but remember that watch and the 97% accuracy on stroke? This is going to happen. Uber are working on this, and they're looking at rolling out a fleet by 2020. There's one happening in Dubai this year using a drone, an autonomous drone manufactured by a Chinese company called Ehang. Hey. It's branding. I didn't make it up, you know. I wouldn't have chosen that name, but what are you going to do? Airbus are working on it. This is Airbus's idea for how you do flying cars. It's a hybrid. Toyota are working on it. There's a cute, small startup out of Germany which have come up with a really impressive one. And this is it.
So here at Lilium, we are developing the world's first entirely electric vertical takeoff and landing jet. We want to establish and build a new means of transportation.
Although you're working on it every day, you still got these moments where you think, wow, that is something really, really cool that we're doing here, and it just feels amazing to be actually a really big part of that.
So you have an airplane that takes off vertically like a helicopter. But once it's in the air, it accelerates into forward flight and flies with wing-borne lift. And this way it achieves much higher speeds than cars, but also higher speeds than a helicopter. So connectivity is what it's all about.
What's beautiful about their idea is it's not like a quadcopter, which most of the flying cars these days are based on. The quadcopter has rotors that are just pointed down all the time. These ones, because they swivel, it's far, far more efficient. It can go far faster because the rotors are pushing in the right direction, up to 300 kilometers an hour. And because it's far more efficient, the batteries last a lot longer, so you can go faster and you can go further on the same amount of battery. So it's a really cool idea. They're just a startup, so they might get bought out, they might disappear, who knows, but the idea is a good one. Another caveat about this kind of stuff, though, is as these cars become connected, you've got to watch out for this. This is a story that was printed in Wired magazine last year. I think it was last year, it might have been 2 years ago at this point. Basically, two security researchers contacted Andy Greenberg, who works for Wired, and said, we want you to drive a hacked car, General Motors Jeep. They put him in it, had him drive down the highway, and remotely, they logged into the vehicle, they started playing with the entertainment system, started turning on the windscreen wipers as he's driving down the freeway, and then they started interfering with the steering and with the transmission, and eventually they drove him off the road into the ditch. Now, it was controlled, it went slowly, so he wasn't in any danger at any time, but they could take complete control of his car remotely with a laptop. And the car wasn't modified. They could do it to anyone. They showed him they could access any of the 300,000 of these cars that were on the road at the time. Now, they were responsible security researchers, and they contacted General Motors, and General Motors issued a fix on a USB stick, which who knows how many people went and collected it and installed it in their car. But what I'm saying is these auto manufacturers have to be aware they're not making cars anymore. They're making computers that move. And they've got to design security in from the get-go. Number 4, and I'm running out of time. I'll try and whip through them a little faster. Agriculture. Agriculture is going to be enormously transformed. We're starting to see this happen now. We have here a beautiful wheat field with rolling hills and plains, and that's all going to go away. That has to go away because we have to feed 9 billion people in a few years' time, and this form of agriculture just won't cut it. So we got to move to something like this. This is indoor vertical farming. This is where you have plants in hydroponics with LED lights. And because the lights are LED and they're immediately over the plants, they respond to sensors in the plants or around the plants. So they change their lighting depending on what light recipe the plant needs at any point in time. Because it's hydroponic, the plants get 95% less water. There's 95% less water used in getting them to grow. Because it's indoor in a controlled environment, there's no need for pesticides or herbicides. So the inputs to grow these plants is significantly reduced. It's at high density, and it's vertical, so you can just stack them row upon row upon row upon row, upon row upon row upon row. You can have these vertical farms in the middle of cities. So you're massively reducing your food miles. Now, can anyone think of anywhere in the middle of a city that's soon going to be vacant and looking for something to do? Car parks. Multi-story car parks. This is their future. And it's not just for plants, but meat is now being produced in vitro as well. They're producing chicken and beef and all kinds of meats now using cells that they harvest from the animals, or in some cases using plant proteins, and they put them into bioreactors and they can grow the meat. I hear a lot of people getting a little bit uncomfortable with this one. But if it tastes as good, and it doesn't require vast tracts of land, it doesn't require battery farms for hens or pigs, if it doesn't require cruelty or killing of animals, why wouldn't you? You don't require antibiotics in the meat because it's grown in a bioreactor. It's not grown in hugely unhealthy and unsafe and unsanitary conditions like a lot of huge farms are. So that's going to happen. Again, vastly reduced carbon and water footprints for these. And what happens to all the farms, all these huge, huge farms? Well, you return them to biodiversity and ecotourism. Or you grow forests. And in the forests, you have carbon sequestration. So suddenly you're pulling carbon back out of the air and helping alleviate climate change. Healthcare is another one that's going to be massively impacted. This is a graph of my heart rate on November 12th, 2015, when I was presenting in front of an audience like this. And you can see the time that I was presenting in the middle of the afternoon there where it spikes, but you can see I was unsettled for most of the day. When you go into a doctor's surgery and you're waiting 15 or 20 minutes if you're lucky, and you go into the doctor, and the doctor takes your pulse and takes your blood pressure, and you're thinking ahead to the next appointment you have in 10 minutes on the other side of town, and you've got your kids to pick up from school, you're stressed. And you've just sat in a waiting room for 15, 20 minutes with 10 other people who are sick. You know, it's not a good place to be, and it's no wonder that this snapshot of that 10 seconds that the doctor takes doesn't tell him very much useful. But if he can look at something like this, or she can look at something like this, it changes everything. Now, what if that data is sent to a network in the cloud, a network application? And the network application says, okay, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. And it keeps looking at your data and everyone else who's on that network. All their data is constantly uploaded until some aspect of their health goes out of tolerance. A notification gets sent to the appointed doctor and to the patient to say, oi, something's up. And an appointment is scheduled, and the doctor has all the relevant data when you get there. If this sounds familiar, this is what the Asset Intelligence Network does for assets. But you take that, copy and paste it, and put it into healthcare, and you're doing exactly the same thing. It's preventive maintenance for people. And then you 3D print the parts to repair them. This was a study that was done this year where they 3D printed ovaries from mice, transplanted the 3D printed ovaries into the mice, and the mice gave birth to live pups. This is what's coming, folks. You get an appointment scheduled, you go in, they take some cells, they grow a new heart, they grow a new liver, they grow new kidneys from your cells. So there are no issues of rejection. Medicine is changing hugely. You can use robots as well in healthcare for looking after seniors, or also, even more interestingly, I think, for helping educate kids who may have special needs and who don't necessarily interact as well with their peers or with their educators. This is a quick video I have of how human interfaces will change with computers. This is a colleague of mine at the Hanover Fair, and I shot this on my iPhone, so I apologize for the quality, but it's a service technician kind of idea where he goes up to a robot which is faulty and gets a 3D image of that robot. He can tap on it to get the repair instructions. So he's told, okay, or she's told, unscrew these particular 5 screws. Screws come out, you see what's underneath. You're told to loosen the motor bolts, take off the fan belt. All this kind of stuff is available today, and this is all happening on the iPad. So the repair technician is getting all the instructions. They can double-click in to see the repair history of the device. This was at the Hanover Fair, so the connectivity was crap, so it takes a couple of seconds to refresh. But you see the whole repair history, and you can go in and look at any individual record. And that kind of thing is going to become, you know, that's here today, so that's kind of standard stuff. But as we start to head into things like even more augmented reality, we're going to get things like this happening.
We've been teaching human anatomy the same way for 100 years. Students get a cadaver, then they look at medical illustrations, and it's completely two-dimensional, and the human body isn't.
Microsoft HoloLens is a holographic computer that you wear. It enables you to bring your digital world into your real world.
At Case Western Reserve University, we are focused on solving problems and creating new knowledge.
My job is to teach, and I really think this could impact almost everything that we teach people. With HoloLens, you can see the muscles on top of the skeleton all at the same time. You can bring them in and out and exactly understand where things sit.
You can take any anatomical part and show any of it. You can move it around, you can make it kind of translucent so you can see through the outside, and that really helped me understand like how cardiac anatomy worked. I actually had a moment where I found the aortic valve, and it was the first time that I'd actually seen the aortic valve in relation to all the other anatomical structures. You know, it was a way of seeing it that you couldn't do with an actual heart.
So, education is going to be massively transformed, but even more than that, the whole way we interface with reality and with computers is going to change enormously, because instead of wearing a device like the HoloLens here, which is big and awkward, but it's a first version, we will have very simple glasses and eventually contact lenses, which will give us an augmented reality view of what's around us. Voice controlled. We'll no longer need computer monitors, because we'll have a virtual keyboard in front of us. We'll have voice control. We can turn on our spreadsheet up here, bring it to the front, work away on it. Okay, get rid of it. Email down here, work away on the virtual keyboard. Okay, get rid of it. Walk out on the street, get virtual reality view of things around you. Download a tourist package for a new city you've just gone into. Walk down the street and be told what's happening, what building is what, where, turn left here, see this, etc. It's going to change enormously everything we do. I'll keep going fast because I'm running out of time here and there's a few more to get through. We're going to see the rise of enormous business networks as well. I mentioned the Asset Intelligence Network, which is already out there, the Vehicles Network, which Marianne will be talking about later on today. There'll be other ones like the Health Network, which doesn't exist yet, but will do. And the reason these will happen is because you get this kind of network effect where, you know, when there was only 2 telephones in the world, they weren't much good. As we went up to 5 telephones, each phone on the network became more valuable because it could talk to another 4 people. And then you got to 12, and suddenly they all became more and more valuable. Each phone had greater value, and now we have billions. And it's the same with things like social networks. I mean, if there was only 10 people on Facebook, it would be no good to anybody. But because there's 2 billion, It's enormously valuable to everyone because you can contact anyone. And similarly with LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram and so on and so on. The more things or people that are on a network, the more valuable it becomes. So as we add more and more things to the Internet of Things, we get more value from the networks that come out of it. So we'll see the rise of enormous business networks where devices are talking to each other. The technology blockchain, I'm sure you've heard a lot about, but that's going to change many, many, many aspects of our lives. And if we look at, for example, this study from Joy Ito out of the Media Lab, the MIT Media Lab, he's director of the MIT Media Lab, he says that it'll do to the financial systems what the internet did to media. Remember when you went out and bought a newspaper? No longer. Everyone consumes their news now online. You may get a newspaper as well, but you know, people bought newspapers and that was their only source of news apart from radio and television. Same thing will happen. The financial systems will be completely changed by blockchain, and they know it. So they're investing heavily in it. They're all getting out there and getting into and onto blockchains. Some of the biggest investors in studies in blockchain are the financial houses, including Goldman and people like that. It's not just the financial industry, though. Hospital expenses can be dropped 20%. A lot of the admin stuff, for example, which is, I don't want to say wasted money, but you know, the money would be better spent on saving people's lives, I'm sure. So if we could do away with a lot of the admin and the need for it and make it more transparent and more authenticated, then that's what blockchain will do for that. We'll see it as well in delivery systems. Walmart are testing a delivery system with drones, where the drones use blockchain to talk to your secure lockbox, so that as it approaches your lockbox, it talks to your lockbox, the door pops open, the drone drops the delivery in, the door closes, and the whole transaction has been recorded on blockchain. We see it as well with loyalty programs, how they're going to be changed, and also energy. I mentioned energy earlier, but energy and these different organizations, Centrica, Stedin, TEPCO, Shell, many, many, many of the biggest energy firms see how blockchain is going to transform their industry and are getting in there at the very start to make sure that they've got all the, excuse me, all of the standards and everything in place. For things like microgrids, it's going to be hugely transformative. There was a study done in New York 2 years ago now, where you had a community with solar panels on some of the houses, and they were buying and selling energy in amongst the community generated from the solar panels using blockchain. Another area where blockchain will have a huge, huge, huge impact is in the area of corruption. Now, I understand that there are no issues with corruption in South Africa. But other countries, like some of the former Soviet republics, Ukraine here, for example, are using blockchain to make sure that any purchasing that's done by the government is done through blockchain and recorded there to get over the possibility of any bribes taking place. Their whole procurement system is going through blockchain. And in the Republic of Georgia, they've put their entire land registry on the blockchain. So again, all the buying and selling of land, that all goes through blockchain now, and it's all recorded and transparent. We're nearly there. Artificial intelligence, that's going to massively change things. Again, I keep saying that, but it is. A lot of people are concerned about artificial intelligence stealing their jobs. So I think there's a good example in this if you think back to this device, which is known as the spinning jenny. And the spinning jenny was the first real industrial device that kicked off the Industrial Revolution in the UK and the rest of the world. And it was a loom, a spinning loom. And when these started out, there was a movement called the Luddites. And the Luddites went out and tried smashing these because it felt they were taking their jobs. But what actually happened was it kicked off the Industrial Revolution. You had people now be able to buy cloth for a fraction the price they could before because it was being manufactured by these devices. You had the people who were supplying to the looms. Suddenly there was a massive uptick in the amount of wool being required to produce, or cotton that was required to produce the cloth. You had the loom manufacturers, loom service technicians. If there was a PDMS for looms back then, that would have kicked off as well. I mean, it kicked off whole new industries. Deloitte did a fabulous study last year where they looked at data, census data in the UK from 1871 through to 2011, so 140 years of data. And they showed that, sure, some jobs were impacted. Washerwomen and laundry workers, for example, the number of jobs there collapsed. But on the other hand, you had an increase. So in this graph, what you have, the dark blue is the caring professions in 1871, and the light blue is the muscle-powered ones. The muscle-powered ones are cleaners, domestic servants, laborers, and miners. But 2011, suddenly the caring industries, that is nurses, teachers, social workers, etc., has gone way up, and the muscle ones have gone down. And you see this in this kind of data, where professional services, as increased wealth has taken hold over 140 years, the amount of professional services required has gone up, the number of accountants, for example. But also it leads to things like the number of bar staff has increased. People have more spending money, so they go to the pub. And not just that, but people now are able to care about how they look. The number of hairstylists and barbers has gone up as well. Ancillary industries have gone up. So, yeah, some jobs have gone, but other industries have been created around it. We're on the home stretch. We're nearly there. I'm out of time. I talked to a guy called Pascal Brossette in Schneider Electric in 2014. He was CTO at the time. And he said to me, Tom, it costs us $2 to put a system on a chip. And he said, at a cost of $2, why wouldn't we put a system on a chip on everything we manufacture? So a system on a chip is smarts and connectivity. They were putting smarts and connectivity on everything they manufactured, right down to circuit breakers. That was September 2014. So you can imagine today the cost of that is at least half that, $1 less. So now everything that's going to be manufactured from here on out will have smarts on it. So the term digitization, the term Internet of Things will become redundant, like this telephone booth. If you remember the term internet-connected phone, it's redundant, it's gone away. Nobody says that anymore because all phones now are internet-connected. Or interactive website is another one. Nobody says that anymore. Similarly, nobody will be thinking, nobody will be saying Internet of Things or digitization in 2027 because everything will be digitized and connected. There's a beautiful quote by Nikola Tesla where he says, when wireless is perfectly applied, the whole earth will be converted into a huge brain, which in fact it is, all things being particles of a real and rhythmic whole. And he said that in 1926. I consider myself a futurist, I'm an amateur. So, conclusion. Digital is taking off, we all know that, and it's going to change everything. So the time to reimagine and to move is now. Thank you.
Tom Raftery, ladies and gentlemen. That was absolutely amazing, Tom.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Incredible insights. Tom, I just want to ask you, I mean, you speak about manufacturing, for example, and you speak about all of these changes. It's your first visit to our continent, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Do you think that we, as a continent, and I know you travel a lot and you see a lot of things, if you look at what the amount of money that the Koreans are spending, the Chinese are spending, the Germans, the Americans on automation, and certainly it is going that way with shifting workforces. Do you think that we can catch up on this continent and we can get up to those levels of automation, the digitization that you're talking of? Because right now, those countries are at an advantage.
Sure. Actually, they're at a disadvantage because they've got a lot of sunken assets. You don't. You can leapfrog them. And you can go straight, particularly if we look at the idea of the product as a service, where you don't have to buy the assets, you can rent the assets, your startup costs come down, you can get into asset-heavy industries for a fraction of the price. You don't have the same sunken costs that they do.
Okay, that's absolutely fascinating. Last thing, what keeps you awake at night? What scares the living daylights out of you? With all of this that's happening around us, is there one thing that keeps Tom awake at night?
My dog barking at the neighbors going by is about the only thing.
Tom Raftery, thank you so much. We're glad you enjoyed your trip here. And I hope you get on to another safari, because this is part 2.
By the way, there's a QR code there, folks. If you rate me really highly on the QR code, your chances of winning go significantly up.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Tom.